Everybody, and hope you're doing all well as you're seeing this presentation and ready to talk about the eOceans app and the Red Sea. So we're going to be talking a little bit about using this eOceans app for understanding how humans and animals in the marine environment interact and how we're hoping to use this in the Red Sea. So hi, everyone. My name is Matt Tietbohl. I'm a PhD student at the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That's located on the Red Sea side, a little bit about an hour north of Jeddah. But I'm originally from the USA in Reading, Pennsylvania. So I've been a bit of a nature nerd my whole life, so I fell in love with the sea, watching natural history documentaries because there really isn't any oceans in Pennsylvania. But I'm a big fan of diving and exploring. And I've been in Saudi Arabia since 2015 when I came over to work my master's, and I've moved on to be working on my PhD right now, where I'm studying herbivorous fishes. So just to give you a little bit of background of that, I'm working on a few different projects for my PhD to try and understand how herbivorous fishes in the Red Sea use different habitats, trying to understand some differences in their feeding preferences among species here and how that compares to other places around the world where we know a lot more about herbivorous fish, and then generally trying to understand how they impact the health of coral reefs here in the Red Sea. And this was a slide for a friend who's going to be helping with an Arabic translation, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it tonight. But maybe for a future presentation, we'll have Amr join us.
Hi everyone, I'm Christine Wardpage. We also have Ronnie. We're both from eOceans and we're a small team based in Atlantic Canada. I'm on the call for two reasons. One is I've led many crowdsourced global projects, and I'm working with Matt on the Our Ocean and COVID-19 project, which we're covering here today. But I'm also responsible for developing the app that we're going to use to be collecting this data to make it easier and faster. So eOceans was founded with the belief that our ocean can be radically more exciting and valuable if we make faster and more collaborative discoveries. And we're building the platform to make this happen. And how it works is when you go to the ocean and you make an observation, whether you're a scientist or somebody who's has their livelihood at sea or a citizen scientist, every observation you make is part of a much bigger puzzle because the oceans are dynamic and highly variable. Each observation is a little tiny piece of this very big puzzle. And when we stitch them together, we can have a clearer picture of local, regional, national, and global scales. And so here we're talking about the Our Ocean and COVID-19 project, and I'll pass it back to Matt.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking a bit about the Red Sea and Saudi Arabia oceans in the context of this global project and how we think the Red Sea can fit into this. So here's, I guess, obviously a picture of Saudi Arabia and the Red Sea. You can see us, well, where I am roughly north of Jeddah. So if you look at the kind of the middle of the Red Sea, you see that big light blob would be the city of Jeddah. And I'm a little bit north of that. I realize, I guess you can't see my mouse, but a little bit north of that, yeah. About there, a little bit south, but close enough. So yeah, that's where I am at Calst in the Red Sea, which is a really kind of special, unique environment. So according to some people, Saudi Arabia is home to some of the world's most resilient coral reefs as far as their ability to cope with changing temperatures. At least for now, although we know this might change as global warming continues to impact the oceans and the Red Sea continues to warm. We also know that Saudi Arabia is a relatively unexplored ocean compared to some of the other places around the world. It's been used for people and fisheries for hundreds of years, a very long time, but has not been explored by, quote unquote, Western science to a very extended degree over the years. So there's a lot of people haven't been to the Red Sea, and it's a really beautiful place to explore. And some of the things that are happening now in Saudi Arabia, especially with the government's Vision 2030 for the country and kind of revamping it and opening Saudi more to the world, are these really large development plans that are focused around the Red Sea because it's one of Saudi Arabia's greatest resources. So there are a few of these different very large scale giga projects like the Red Sea project, which is kind of a high-end environmental ecotourism, Amala, which is another project similar along those lines, and NEOM, which is building a city of the future in the northern Red Sea. So there's a lot, so the Red Sea is a really special environment, and there's a lot of development and a lot of ideas and plans to expand tourism and bring more people into this environment to see, the amazing coral reefs and fishes and animals that we have here. And as these companies continue to develop and bring in more people, there's definitely going to be some impact on the marine environment. And it's important that we kind of document how people and animals are using the Red Sea in this kind of changing time as the country is, developing the ocean more. And I think that's where eOcean can play a really important role, helping us to understand what's happening with people and animals in the Red Sea. So, of course, we all know about COVID-19 and how that's kind of slowed the world down ahead. And certainly here in Saudi Arabia, there was a bit of an impact. There was a big shutdown early on in the pandemic, and not a lot of people were able to access the ocean as they once were. Although now that things are getting a little bit better in the country, access to the ocean has increased and research and development is going ahead. So the Ocean X, which is this very new large research vessel, has just actually wrapped up a recent expedition in the northern Red Sea, studying various aspects of the coral reefs and the deep sea environment up there. I myself was on a recent research cruise that just got back, where we were up near the Red Sea project area, documenting some ongoing coral bleaching, which wasn't so good, but also exploring the fish and benthic biodiversity of all the different animals around that area, which is pretty great. And construction is starting at some of these places. So the Red Sea project site, despite global pandemic, is already starting to develop and put in places so that they can get up and running. And people are now starting to get back to using the ocean as they normally were for things like diving and fishing, and just getting out and exploring the Red Sea as they used to, although in this new COVID time. We're hoping that this eOceans app can help us understand how people will be using the Red Sea now and in the future as these big development projects and increased tourism might change that kind of dynamic. So this global project, eOceans, is happening in about 25 other countries so far. So this is just a map of some of the existing eOceans projects and relationships from past projects. So we want to try and get a similar picture like this, but with a lot more points in the Red Sea. So we're hoping to add some more observations to give us a better snapshot of what's happening in the region and how humans and animals in the marine environment are interacting. So now we're going to play a video that explains this mobile app that will show you how this real-time data collection at sea, offline with no internet, works to give us a really good snapshot of what's happening in the oceans.
$1 trillion per year, providing essential products and services to 1 billion people. Many threats, like plastic pollution, ship collisions, and overfishing, have significant costs. On the other hand, there is ample opportunity to celebrate. Billions have been spent on conservation. Species have come back from the brink of extinction. Fisheries have improved. Tourism has value. Protected areas have grown. Although marine researchers work hard to track these changes, a lack of data means their discoveries often lag years behind ocean change. eOceans can help. Our platform was designed by Dr. Christine Ward-Page, an expert in crowdsourcing ocean data. Our mobile app allows all ocean explorers to become scientists by simply logging what they see. Our analytical tools provide researchers with real-time insights to monitor oceans by species, areas, and issues. Through our community feature, explorers follow how their data are being used to answer complex questions. eOceans is on a mission to help communities and researchers make real-time discoveries to celebrate success, or to mitigate and adapt to change on timescales that keep pace with business, society, and ocean change. Contact eOceans to get a team started in your community today. For the oceans, for us. The ocean.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Matt, for your insights about what's happening in the Red Sea and just even hearing about those projects continuing on during COVID-19 is quite surprising. I'm happy to hear that research is continuing, but I'm sure we'll be noticing a lot of changes as those giga projects continue into action.
Undoubtedly.
So I'm going to take a little bit of time to speak about the app and how it functions. And this is really our call to action to anybody who's watching with us today is we're asking you to download the app, track your activities and log your observations, share what you are seeing, and then follow along with the project as it progresses. So our vision is for the app, the eOceans app, to be your personal activity and observation tracker that you can use while you are at sea. And as you are logging your activities, you are also simultaneously sharing to science. So when you first download the app and you go to make your very first observation to eOceans, you'll have the decision between choosing a single observation or the auto tracker transect function. The single observation is great for recording a single moment in time. This is great for single point observations, or if you're on the beach and between building sand castles and you think about how much you really want to contribute to ocean science, this would be a great moment to do so. And then transect, or the auto track function, is great if you are doing a continuous activity. So for some research purposes, you might be running a full transect, or if you are just on a boat for a leisurely cruise rise or a beach walk from point A to point B, you set the transect function and it records your time, which equates to your effort as you are doing that activity. And as you go along, you create observations of what you see or don't see. Next, going from left to right here on the screen, you will go through these next steps in your logging observation. First, the app will ask you to take a picture of your surroundings. This does not have to be a picture of everything you are recording. It just needs to provide us context for your observation. So a simple landscape picture of the ocean or of the beach is sufficient. No need to get up close and personal to other people or wildlife. When you take the photo, it will log your GPS and time and date. This really ensures the real-time aspect of your data log. And then your activity, choose your activity. What are you doing as you are making this observation? If you are scuba diving versus sailing, that's going to change the context of what you're seeing. Next, it will ask you to choose the animals or the species you have noticed, you've observed. So we have a drop-down list of 500,000 species from the WORMS database, and common names included there. There's also an option if you do not know the species you are looking at, and that is the unknown option. So it could be shark -unknown. And then count, how many of those species are you noticing, are you recording? And if you do not see any animals or any wildlife, this is a perfectly acceptable log and very valuable still. So if that's the case, you just hit the skip button and it will take you to the next page, which is logging the human observation. So as Matt pointed out, we're interested in both not only how wildlife is changing and using the Red Sea, but also how humans are changing and using the ocean. So for humans, this could be if you are seeing any fellow kayakers or scuba divers, you would record the amount there and the activity that they are doing, as well as any human-generated pollutions. So we've been seeing a lot of records of personal equipment, so masks and gloves are on there too. Our human list is not exhaustive, so if you ever are trying to record something that's not in our drop-down list, please just let us know and we can add it accordingly. And once you have recorded those two items, you go to your verification page, your saving point of your log. I will note that if you do not see any wildlife or humans or pollutions, just a clean, pristine, empty beach, that is just as valuable. That's recording those zeros or those absences of what is not present. So at the end, when you are going to save your log, you can also add notes. This is a great place if you are using it for a personal log of writing down maybe how, it was a great day and the weather was excellent. Or if you are trying to take some more scientific observations, this is a place to do that as well. And we are currently building out an alert system, a potential alert system. So this is where you could tell us a bit more about how your observations are interacting. So for instance, if you recorded a whale and you also recorded some ghost gear or some loose fishing gear, but what was actually happening was a whale entanglement, that's where you would tell us here, the hashtag whale entanglement. That hashtag will alert us that this is something we need to notify people of. Then verify everything that you wrote down was correct and safe. And there you go, you have your first ever log to the eOceans database. You will also see on your app the community channel. This feature will be released in our newest update. This community channel is where you can follow along with the regional projects that are happening in your area and to see what other people are recording. Along with the mobile app is a dashboard. So this dashboard can be accessed via a web browser on your laptop or desktop. And this is where you can see the global effort for eOceans data collection. So on the app, you're really only going to see your regional effort, but here you can explore where other effort is happening for eOceans. As well as you'll be able to go and see your past observations and edit them. So this is a place for you to make any corrections you might have to make, or if you have any extra photos that you did not take with your phone, say an underwater camera or a nicer camera that you used for professional photography, this is where you can upload those as kind of a supplement to your observation for your own purposes as well as ours. And then we will also be offering the opportunity to upgrade and download your personal data. So if you have a need to analyze your data for maybe a research purpose, this is where you can find that and download it for yourself. One key point about the eOceans platform is that the data you record is yours, you own it. So the only people who get to see the specifics of your observations, for example, those exact GPS locations, is yourself and the teams you choose to share it with. So right now, as you are using the app, you are agreeing to share it with the global eOcean and COVID-19 team. But soon you will see a team for your region, which you will be able to join. And we have set it up this way to protect places and possibly endangered animals. No one needs to know exactly where you are seeing something or where you are logging an observation, just the people that you believe are worthwhile to share with. And as more teams form, we hope that this platform is used for other projects to help people answer their own questions about their ocean backyard. So I will pass this back off to Matt to talk about the frequently asked questions.
Thanks. Yeah, great job explaining that. I think it's really cool to see this kind of app being developed and created, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of really cool observations and findings in the future. So just to answer a few frequently asked questions, so it does work offline. I can confirm this. So when I was on this research cruise earlier in October, I was using the eOceans app to log observations of fishing boats and dolphins and a few other interesting animals that we saw. So that you can use it offline. You don't need to have internet for it to function and work, which is pretty fantastic because a lot of us who spend a lot of time in the ocean know that a lot of the time you're not going to have internet access. So that is pretty great. Again, you don't have to take a photo of everything you see. You can just take a photo of the area, which gives you a little bit of context for you and others to log. So when I was taking these pictures, there's a fishing boat out in the distance. My crappy phone is not going to be able to, you're not going to see the boat in that picture, but I know it was there, and it just gives it's just kind of a reference point to show that there was something there and that, yes, you were actually out on the ocean or on the shore. And so, yeah, you can record a few or hundreds of observations, as many as you'd like. Obviously, the more the merrier, but it's also important to remember to record things even when you don't see anything. So you go for a walk along the shoreline, along the Corniche, and you don't see anything, you just see some beautiful waves. No information is still actually information for scientists, because that is important for us to be able to tell where things are not, which is also important if you want to understand how different animals are using their environment, especially around different human activities and in the face of lots of development that's going to be happening in some of these areas. So remember to log zeros. And yeah, so we're hoping to spread the word about this app and get a lot more local dive organizations and marine operators involved. So here are just the logos of some dive companies and operations here in Saudi Arabia that we're hoping to involve, to get more people involved, because the more people that we have out there using the app and logging observations about people and animals, the better idea and picture we'll get about how these humans and animals are interacting in the Red Sea, and how these interactions may or may not be changing as the world shifts out of the COVID pandemic, hopefully relatively soon, and as Saudi shifts into a more tourism-driven marine environment. So we're hoping to get a lot of people involved. If you would like to be involved, you are more than welcome to. We'll have our contact information at the end and in the description of this video, I believe. And so there are a couple, so that's if you would like to get involved at an organizational kind of level. So we're looking to get organizations involved that can kind of be a hub with multiple people who dive at that dive shop or dive in that area, working together. But if you'd like to be involved as an individual, you can also join the eOceans in COVID-19 projects on Facebook. Is a really great place for people to get involved, to learn more about the app, and more importantly, share observations that you're seeing with the eOceans community. It's a really great page, really friendly, a really great way to stay abreast about some cool observations and things that are happening around the world during this COVID time. But you can also follow eOceans on other social media like Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube. And with that, so here's our contact information. If you have any questions about the eOceans app and using it in general, or about using it in the Red Sea, or projects going on in the Red Sea and how you can be more involved. And with that, we'd be happy to take questions if there are any, I believe.
Unmute. I have questions. So you talked about the shutdown and then this sort of slow reopening. What I didn't get a sense of is what kind of things you as a scientist and other scientists might be looking for as trends. So in other parts of the world, we've heard of, for example, like growth of grasses along the beach because there's fewer people walking along the beach, or in other cases, there's more plastic and more pollution because people are just throwing it in, or whale strandings. Like there's just, so what kind of things in the Red Sea, if you were to get a picture and were to get that sort of detailed, what are some of the things you might be expecting or looking for? With the understanding that it's hard to know when you're sitting locked in a lockdown position, right? So yeah, what kind of things would you look for?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so as far as I understand, as far as like, fishing boats go, there weren't, because there are a lot of people who rely on fishing as their, main source of income. So I don't think we would necessarily have picked up that fishing was closed long enough to see an impact on fish populations in the area. Plastic is an interesting one because the coast of Saudi Arabia generally does have a bit of an issue with plastic pollution and people leaving their trash, or the trash getting blown, through the desert and ending up in the ocean. We're lucky that we don't have any large freshwater inputs, so we don't have a lot of plastic that gets into the Red Sea from those systems. And I think relative to other areas around the world, we generally have a little bit less plastic. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was, especially things like masks and other, COVID-related plastics and waste. It would not be surprised if there is an uptick in those over these, next few weeks to months, as more people are, after, being a bit frustrated about being stuck inside and not being allowed to go out for a while, start to spend more time around the oceans. I think that could be something that, and I think there is some baseline data, at least from some areas, on what, beach plastic loads were like. So that might be something that, could be an indicator of sorts.
Mm-hmm. And what about marine protected areas? Are there marine protected areas, and are they nearby, or are they typically, you know, not enforced, but people listen to it, or are people normally fishing inside of marine protected areas anyways, or?
That's a great question. I think in Saudi Arabia, currently there are 2 or 3 marine protected areas in paper. I don't think in practice. There are some pseudo protected areas around royal palaces and docks where people are not supposed to go fishing. You're not supposed to come so many, kilometers away from these certain places or Coast Guard or Navy bases. But at least as far as I know, on a local level, it seems like that's not always super strict for some of the local fishermen who are friendly with the Coast Guard. But that also being said, with the Giga project, so the Red Sea project is planning on the whole area, so several hundred kilometers, is going to become a no-take protected area, strictly enforced in the coming months, maybe as soon as March or February. So there are some big protected areas planned, and I think NEOM is certainly going to have some protected areas with very limited access up there as well. But yeah, right now there's really not that much as far as protected areas go in Saudi Arabia.
So fishing inside of them is not, it wouldn't be a change. Like some of the places we've heard people noticing more fishing inside of marine protected areas and resorting back to some of the more destructive, like bomb or cyanide fishing. So we wouldn't really expect that to be any different today.
Probably not. And most of the fishing in Saudi Arabia is small, like day boats. So people going out with hand lines, small nets, some traps. Like we're fortunate that there's no, massive longliners or trawling boats in most of the Red Sea.
Right.
Or extensive use of gill nets in a lot of places. So the fishing pressure, I think, is generally believed to be pretty high. And there's, there are definitely some evidence of overfishing of certain groups, like elasmobranch, sharks, rays, large groupers, snappers, that kind of thing. But it's kind of diffuse, it seems, throughout the Red Sea, because it's not, there's maybe a few hundred boats at each fishing port, but they don't always go out every day. And the schedule is a bit irregular, and there are breaks built into the fishing season with Ramadan and a few other local things.
Right. So the other two things that I would be interested in is cetaceans and also the markets. So if people are still fishing for elasmobranchs, for example, do those markets still exist? Are there still avenues to sell it, or is it consumed locally? And I don't expect you to have the answer to that. It's just something that if you get out to the markets, or if you are talking to people, like understanding what those markets still look like, because in other parts where we've heard, if people are out fishing for these endangered species, is it for local consumption, or is it to sell to, a global supply chain? And that's, something that, also trying to figure out.
Yeah, well, I do actually have some answers for that. So in 2008, there was actually a royal decree from the king himself that banned all fishing and selling of sharks, and I think rays. It might have maybe at least sharks, maybe rays. So that's been illegal since 2008, but it hasn't really been enforced. But we've noticed kind of offhand, not quantitatively at least, that when you go to the fish markets, they're usually, you don't see sharks and things out in the open, and at least the big fish market in Jeddah. So the country does seem to be maybe trending into a higher degree of enforcement of that, but we'll have to see. I think most of those are also destined, like shark is not very valued locally. It's one of the cheaper meats. I think most of the time it's sold. There are a few buyers, I think, in Jeddah who would buy, big sharks to sell and take their fins and such. But so yeah, it'll be interesting to see if enforcement continues. And the way that the country and these projects are talking about, protecting their oceans and kind of preserving it so that there's something for people to see, I think that trend will hopefully continue.
It'd be interesting for that, especially with that promotion of tourism. Because people aren't going to fly all over, to the other side of the world, for example, to go and see, an empty ocean. In my mind, I'm not going to.
That seems to be the mindset here. So it's exciting to see that kind of take hold.
That's amazing. That's great. Thanks, Matt. That's all I have. I'll pass it back to Ronnie if she has any questions or to close off.
I think we'll close off now. So thank you so much, Matt, for leading this presentation today, as well as we will be having another presentation sometime in the new year about an update about where we are in the project and potentially a presentation that incorporates kind of a global ocean view and is less on the regional focus. So stay tuned for those as they will be coming. And yeah, thank you again, Matt, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you guys as well. Excited to see what comes of this.
Great.